Welcome to the Man Down Podcast. My name is Ted Knutson. Today we're going to talk about fashion kinks, including Patrick's distinct love for cowboy boots of all varieties. We are going to talk about Sphincter Diamonds, and eventually we're going to get to talking about the real topic of what we were supposed to discuss today, which was anxiety. The last two episodes have been fucking great. Hopefully you guys love it and tell everybody. And thank you so much for your time. Stay tuned.
Everyone in America's from the country. Like, it's all the country. The whole thing's fucking enormous. Like, unless you're from New York in America, you're from the country. That, honestly, as bad as it sounds, that's kind of my perception, where I'm like, there's Los Angeles in America, there's New York in America, there's Chicago, and then everywhere else is the sticks.
I
Like,
didn't
that's how
realize
they work.
I didn't realize that you and Jeremy Clarkson were the same person, just
Dog.
like gapped by 30 years.
America's just too, like, get it under control. Like, you guys have got too much of it. Like, you shouldn't have expanded so much. You should have left it. It was a bad idea to head
Louisiana
west.
Purchase was the first mistake, and then everything else after that, horrible.
You should never get into business with the French. Everyone knows that. But like, look,
Just like land wars in Asia.
I've got to say, actually, the way those two topics cross over is that there are French companies that make French cowboy boots. Because, in the south of France, in the Camargue, there are cowboys, and these cowboy boots have started to call my name,
Haha.
um, in quite a worrying way. Like, fortunately, they're expensive enough that I can't buy them, and that, I think, is for everybody's. But did you see, actually, on the topic of cowboy boots? Did any of you see the Chili's cowboy boots?
No.
So I think it was a combination of Tecovas, like the cowboy boot company, and Chili's are making cowboy boots out of the red leather of the booths in Chili's. And they are fucking sick. Like, those,
Wow.
okay, if you're going to get cowboy boots, I think you're
Let's
obliged to get something really camp.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And this whole thing came from on the last episode that said Patrick is better at having clips that go out on social media and go viral because he has such big opinions about things. And I'll and then brought it back around to cowboy boots. We should definitely put these boots on the screen, though. I'm very interested in that.
Mm.
I'm going to confess something that I think might be a little kink for me.
Ooh, hello.
I find line dancing abnormally hot. I don't know why. I think it's like fucking sexy and it's goofy, but I think that it's like, yeah, I find line dancing to be like, wow, that's really sexy. That's like the tango for like South Americans, I think.
That is the most redneck shit.
This is what I'm telling you.
Okay, so to give you the benefit of the doubt, I would say that the women doing line dancing, and actually the men doing line dancing, are generally quite hot, right? Like, that's true. But you're saying that the actual act of line dancing, which to me always looks like, when there are those people who it's like one guy, but then there are sticks connecting him with a bunch of marionettes, and so they dance it. Like, that's what line dancing is to me.
To me, it's like short Daisy Dukes and women with nice legs and boots and like, you can see the abs and like there's lots of wiggling. It's just hot, dude. That's my take. It's like it's redneck burlesque. Let's put it that way.
Okay, yeah.
Let
Now
me make
you're
it
selling me.
pretentious enough for you that you'll appreciate it.
Now you're selling it to me. Like, this is working for me. Like, look, I completely get it. I guess part of the issue for me is that a lot of the kind of woman that I imagine doing line dancing, I'm like, you're not really my tempo, Whereas the kind of woman I imagine doing tango is extremely my tempo. However, it is all skin in the right places. A boot is hot. A boot
We
in
are
a
coming
short
into boot
short is
season,
it's
right?
hot.
Pumpkin spice coincides with boot season. What? This is true.
But there's every time of the year there's a way to make it perverted. We're like, summer, there's a little bit more skin out, like the autumn, oh, it's boot season. Like,
I love stockings. And yeah.
I think everybody is a little bit is okay. How do I phrase this? I think that everybody is a little bit of a foot fetishist when it comes to footwear. Like, good footwear goes a long way. Like a high heel, a boot. These are hot. One of those strappy, like, gladiator sandals that goes all the way up the
Oh my
leg.
God, I love those things, especially on a great pair of calves. I had no
Exactly.
idea, and then I was like, these are amazing. But like, it's accessorizing the things that already exist, right? Somebody's body that yeah, that's the important bit. I think I have a different take on this. I think everyone has a fashion kink. It's just about finding what it is.
A fashion kink. The
At
thing is,
least one. Some people are entirely fashion kinks.
that's yeah, I'm kind of in that zone, to be honest with you. Yeah, but the difficulty about it is that, like, for it for it to be a kink, it feels like it has to be something that is not intrinsically hot. So, like, when you say you find line dancing hot, but then you describe it as, well, it's hot people with a lot of flesh exposed, then I'm kind of like, okay, but then the line dancing isn't really the kink so much as like the line dancing gathers a load of hotties in a state of relative undress and you're allowed to
And they
watch.
dance in a way that I find like vaguely approachable as opposed to some of the like you watch Strictly and you're like, I can't dance with you. Like this would just be
Yeah,
embarrassing all the time.
that's
Um,
true.
but I think the fashion kink thing is more broadly true, which is that everybody has something like guilty pleasure wise, like everybody
Hmm.
has something that they find hot in fashion that is probably a little off piece. Like, it's the Germans being like leather and latex, hot. We fucking love this.
They're right. Why are we booing the Germans? They're right.
And yours might be yours like I'm any good clothing is hot. Like clearly Derek Guy's kink is good tailoring. Like
Yeah.
just good tailoring. He's like, this is so sexy.
Yeah, he sees someone like reach for something off a high shelf and their collar doesn't move, and he's just like, "Fucking woof." Like, I don't know, man. Like, yeah, I think that I have a load of these. Like, I
Mm,
definitely think, like, look, latex and leather in a way they're doing a similar thing, right? In that they're accessorizing what's already there. They're very close to the skin, and they make everything firm and like taut, which is
okay.
a good time.
Yeah.
Um, man, I've got. Mm. I think dangly earrings are really hot, you know? There's something about it. Often I think it's on quite an elegant woman, but it also
Mhm.
draws
You live in
attention to the
neck.
hair and the neck, and you're
Yeah.
like, "Ooh, like this is good." But I think if I thought about this for 10 minutes, I could come up with like 20 of these. Like,
I'm sorry to spring this on you. I should have given you some warning about it, but it just kind of flowed from your whole cowboy boots explosion in the past.
let's pump the brakes on explosion. Like jeans, right? Jeans are hot.
This is a very controversial take.
What?
So yeah, so the young people think that like jeans are horrible. Why would you ever wear jeans? But these are also like there's a whole generation of Zoomers that are just like they'll never wear jeans for reasons. And I like the jeans that I have. I've looser pairs of jeans. I also have some Boss jeans that are the tighter ones, but they stretch. And then when I wash them, they got to a cashmere texture, which like blew my mind.
Ooh,
Yeah, I know. Like who does not want their legs to be cupped in breathable cashmere?
cupped.
Yeah.
But this is exactly my point. Like nobody's the gene was obviously developed as working clothing,
Yeah.
but we have never developed anything that makes somebody's ass look better than
Mm.
jeans. Like good fitting jeans make people look great. They also make your legs look longer. Like I don't know. Like there's something. If I'm behind my wife and she's wearing jeans, then we're gonna have a problem. I just can't. I can't deal with that. Like, and I think, and also there's a pair of jeans for everyone. Whereas there's some stuff that you're like, well, that looks good on that person, but it doesn't look good on that person. You know,
Mm.
like there are certain things that look great on tall people or really curvy people or whatever it might be. But I think everyone looks good in jeans. As that said, okay, you know that in the last few years we've seen a rise of the kind of pajama pant. Like it's really wafty. Like it seems like it's very thin material.
Yeah.
And when you and people's asses really like move in those things.
They do. I'm familiar. Like, yeah,
That's interesting.
you get the physics property of like, you know, a body in motion tends to stay in motion. Like there's yeah.
Hmm.
I,
But
I,
then,
I can totally visualize what you're talking about.
but then, do you also? Okay, so I've really enjoyed those. But then I also had the thought of like, hold on, if that's the way the human ass moves when it's not in trousers that are holding it in place, that's the
Mhm.
way my ass moves when it's in trousers that are not holding it in place. And that really soured it for me. I was like, I didn't need to know that.
You've also just reminded me of a Robin lyric from like one of my favorite songs of hers.
Okay.
Like how you fit in them jeans. Well, I'm gifted all natural and burst at the seams. I love that. And there's a Trent Muller remix that is like just the best thing. Find that on YouTube. But Robin is pretty awesome and has been awesome for a surprisingly long time.
As soon as you said Robin, I was like, this should have come up when we were talking about Taylor Swift because that's exactly who Taylor Swift should be trying to be.
Yes. Oh my God, you're
Exactly.
right.
Because because Robin's a real fucking artist who has always made music that gets you unbelievably hype. Like, but my point is, it's like artistically sophisticated as well. Like that
Mhm.
is the kind of shit she could be doing.
Yeah, she just needs to like go away for a few years, get in the lab with a pen and a pad.
Trying to get the Sam label off. Like, yeah, man. But also, especially as she's kind of re-collaborating with these Swedish producers, I was like, how are these motherfuckers like not making her music fun? I feel like Swedes are always into this. Like Zara Larsson, she's Swedish as well, and she does kind of like
Her new
enjoyable
album is
bubblegum
like
pop.
exploded everywhere, right? I haven't listened to it. I hadn't had time.
She's fine. She's fine.
This is the horniest episode that we've ever done, and we've done sex episodes. I don't know.
Last episode. Last episode, get cancelled. But
Not
look,
get cancer. Thank you very much. That's in my past.
sure. But we look. It's very important to be a pervert in all the ways. Like I think that you can be attracted to people for any number of different things, and I think the more that you are open to being attracted by like whatever, by their clothes, by their body, but by like the stuff they're into, by the things they talk about. Like, have you ever had that where you've been talking to, where there's somebody who you've never really thought is that attractive, and then they start telling you about something they're really excited about, and you're just like, "Whew, like this is getting pretty hot in here."
This is the entirety of people becoming attracted to autistic people. like they're not usually inherently attractive, but once they get excited and they get, and actually it's one of my favorite things to sort of ask on a second date. It's
Okay.
like, what are you passionate about?
Mm,
And people who are not passionate about anything get in the dumpster. Like it's just, that's not it. I can't do it. Like you've got to find your joy in life in lots of places. And people that find a lot of joy either in
mm,
themselves or in their adventures or other people's joy. I love that. That's great. And then have them talk about it. And when they talk about it and they get excited, like then you see them sort of fully come alive. At least in this particular context. So I like that. And I think you're right. Like, find all the joy in life. That's the secret. Like if you don't currently have it, like figure it out. Find the things in the past that were joyful to you. Seek it out.
mm.
Go find it. Go be present for it. So important.
It's interesting to hear you talk about taking joy in other people's joy like that. Now I think after you said that, I thought that actually is quite a big TED thing. Like you will often say, "I love how much you're into this," or "I find it really exciting how happy this makes you." Or when we talk about our kids, I think we have this reaction to each other as well. You know, it's just like when I hear you talk, especially about like you said the sparkly feeling you get with your daughter. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, this is so nice to hear. Like that kind of, and it does give you pleasure to hear somebody so, I don't know, like what they are. There's like something that is hmm, elevated by this experience that they're having. Like
I think the
that's
whole
really
business
nice.
of podcasts is literally what you're saying right there. It's people appreciating other people's joy and what they're talking about. Now, sometimes
Mm,
it's anti, but really podcasts feel much more intimate than that, and they feel like people are either telling their stories and they're bringing themselves to the forefront. And some people times it's just people listening to good storytellers, but a lot of times it's you start a podcast because you're passionate about thing, and then you
yeah.
listen to someone be passionate and then become an expert in that thing, and you're like, fuck, I love that. Like I wouldn't do
Mm,
it, but I like it when they talk about it, and it's really fun. And I think that a lot of people have that about their spouses too. Like you're like, oh wow, when he gets going like that, or when she starts talking about this thing, I can see her across the room, and I'll see her like talk about the kids or something she did like in the community or something, or like at work, like whatever. And she just lights up, and I'll see other people respond to her, and you're like, fuck,
mm,
that's like so attractive. And it's also, it's that concept of it's a safe concept of third, right? Like the concept of the third, where like
mm,
someone else is attracted to your partner, and you're like, ooh, that's hot, because like it validates my attraction, and like they see that she's attractive, and like you see how she acts like when she's, someone's showing her attention in that way. In this way, it is. other people from a friendship or community perspective also responding in a really positive way, and they bring out parts, they're some of the best parts of themselves. I love that. And I've always been the type of person that will go out of my way to tell somebody that I really appreciate their work, because
Mm,
I think that I want them to continue to produce work, and so this is a virtuous cycle of feedback. Sometimes I'll give criticism, and sometimes people don't like the criticism. I usually don't these days. Like, often someone has to ask me for stuff, and I know that I will just be genuine in what I tell them now, which sometimes is like, actually, your visualization's quite ugly in these ways, and it would be very difficult for me to get buy-in from XYZ inside of clubs
mm.
because people like pretty things. But yeah, I think that, much like being passionate about art and being a fan of things and a relaxed fan, but telling people you are a fan of their work and that you really appreciate it, it helps create more work, which is really, from the best artists, that's what you want.
Yeah, I you sent me a message this morning, and to be fair, I read this just after like packing my girl off to school, and so I was like not in a very emotionally stable moment. But I like handed the phone to my wife, and I was like, I might actually cry right now. Like, this is like, it was genuinely very nice, but also because I know that you will be kind of like blunt if you don't like something. It does mean that I know you're not being fake, which is nice.
I don't I don't need to be fake in my life. I tend, like, I will err toward neutral if I need to be, but like fake is not something that I will embrace in any capacity. And for almost the whole of my life, people definitely know when, like, I don't either like them or like something about what's going on. And it's those people that have resting bitch face when they're just like, and sometimes you don't know whether it's like they're resting bitch face because like they're angry about something or that's just their face. Well, for me, like, usually you can tell I'm pretty frustrated about it. I just don't want to have an interaction with it. Some people are much better at that, and learning to see behind people's masks is a really good trait that's hard to do. But with you, it's easy to be genuine because you're fucking great, and you've
Stop
done a lot
it.
of work on this, and people respond to you. And on the soccer side, like, you're carrying that through. And the guys that you inherited, like, we're not podcasters. like, I sort of am, but like they were not. And it really works, and people respond to all of that, and they tell you about it in person, as you know. So there you go.
I'm actually uncomfortable. I have to change the topic. Like,
Good. We're gonna talk about
it's too
anxiety.
feels too good that it feels bad. Like that.
Ooh,
That's where I am.
I've been very self-sabotagey lately in my
Ooh.
feelings, and I'm
Okay.
clocking it, which I think is good. Like, I'm like,
Interesting.
yeah, and I know that, like, you just put your therapist hat on, but my feelings were, I suddenly got busy and I got a little bit of imposter syndrome, which
Hmm.
is pretty rare for me because I've done a lot of stuff, and so like I usually feel like I can push through with things, but just the volume of work and the amount that needed to be done, and like there's so many things across many different areas, not just inside the football team, but inside the own business and
Mm.
personnel and people wise. I was like, oh, maybe I should just like do the thing that I did a year ago, which was become hyper independent and cut off lots of relationships and just focus on the work. And then I was like, thankfully, I have a recent example of this pattern, and it's really unhealthy for me. And
Mm.
I should not do that. I should just sit in this and be uncomfortable, and then have a sleep and know that you'll feel more confident and comfortable with the path ahead tomorrow. And if you need help, you can ask people for help, and you can even employ people for help.
Mm.
And I was like, oh wow, I could do all of that. In the past, I was like, no, I can't do that. I got to do, like, this has got to be me. And like, maybe eventually I'll ask for help. But this is, I'm trying to be healthier, and I'm trying to realize when I'm stepping on the things that make me, slide down the cliff and then end up
Mm.
holding on, for dear life. Um, yeah. Friday is 1 year since the breakup, which is,
Okay.
hate
Hmm.
that. But yes, thankfully, like, I've had like the horrible year, and reactions, and now I'm like, I recognize these signs in myself, and I can choose a better path, which is really really hard, but you learn it eventually.
Yeah, but so you're in that zone at the moment where you're tolerating the discomfort, um, knowing that it is a better route to go down, but doesn't really necessarily feel better at the
Just
time.
like a
But
moment ago, you were tolerating the discomfort of me complimenting you so much and appreciating you.
I barely tolerated it.
Hmm.
I it does something to me that I find it's like you can take, I don't know, I say you, I can take compliments in certain areas, and then in other areas I find it very difficult. Um yeah, I don't know where to go with that, but it's
I
but
get
I
introduced
work
to
on it.
people all the time, and I need to be introduced to people, and then like some form of my historic accomplishments is attached to that, and I'm just like, whatever, get out of here. Like, let's talk about the thing that's at hand.
Mm.
And it's fucking. I'm not the only one. I know lots of famous people or successful people that are like this. And what is it? Where does it come from? Why?
I mean, well, look, with my therapist hat on, like, um, I guess there are a few different places it could come for me. Like for me, I don't really. I think there's something cultural, right? Obviously, like certain cultures, you're kind of taught not to do it because it makes you sound like a dickhead
Mhm.
to really like luxuriate in a compliment rather than to just like knock it away. It feels like the be self-deprecating is to be welcoming, I guess. But also, I think that if you are a person who has accomplished things or who is good at things, chances are you have quite high standards and you maybe are quite tough on yourself, and therefore maybe like when you have achieved something, you're always a little bit like, well, I know I've achieved that, but also I continue to be critical. And some people, I think, refuse to let themselves luxuriate in the achievement because they think that if they do that, they will lose the motivation to continue achieving. um
I think that's true. Like I've had a recent sporting experience where I've been able to chat with like one of the goats of all time in their sport, and there's an element of anxiety about it. There's an element of
mm,
discomfort of like all the things that I have achieved. But if they have to be honest, they're like, yeah, I was fucking great. And like, but I'm not as good as I could have been, or I didn't do this, or like
mm,
these things happened, or like my career could have gone on longer. Like there's so many different quibbles and caveats about it. And it's really tough to sit in the middle of I am fucking great at this thing. I'm one of the best at this thing, or I was one of
mm.
the best at this thing. But then also people are complimenting while I'm still like my career is still going on. And it's yeah, it's uncomfortable. And I don't really want to take any of that because
Mm.
I've got work to do and I need to focus.
That makes sense to me as well. It's like, am I the person who did these things in the past? Like, is my career stretching out gloriously behind me? Like,
Yeah.
no, that's bullshit. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's a fascinating thing, and I think that many people struggle with it. But I think today's topic is more important, and it's one that we thought was a pretty good capstone. We're going to talk about anxiety, which you have done a ton of research on. You've dealt with people in therapy directly. You, I think, experience it, and I very rarely do. So, like, you're much more of an expert, and I mostly have had it continually secondhand through my relationships with my partners.
Yeah, that's a really common way to experience it. And the interesting thing about becoming a therapist as well is you do tend to feel a little bit of it, what your clients are experiencing. But anxiety and depression are like the most common topics in therapy. Those are the things that bring people to therapy. I became a therapist during COVID. I was working in the NHS back in 2021, and overwhelmingly I was getting women because, as we know, a lot of the burden of child rearing and all that stuff as well as work fell on women during COVID. But also the world felt scary, and fundamentally anxiety, this persistent sense of nervousness or persistent fear, it is that danger sense operating, right? Like everybody has a built-in danger sense, and anxiety is really a form of hypervigilance. You're really scared of what might happen next. During COVID, it's completely reasonable that people were feeling this way. The problem, of course, is that the effects that anxiety produces are not reasonable. Like there's the physical side of it where people can feel like they're having heart attacks, so you're sweating, your heart's racing, your sleep is bad, got GI distress, whatever. But then there's
Ulcers.
the emotional side. Yeah, yeah,
Mm.
ulcers. Then there's the emotional side as well. So like clinginess or obsessive thoughts or short temper. So it can come out in a bunch of different ways. And part of the difficulty with anxiety is that it can present in so many different ways that it's hard to know what's being caused by it and what isn't. There's also, I think, sometimes an impulse, maybe among doctors to say if we don't know what something is, then it's probably stress, it's probably anxiety. But everybody feels it from time to time. If anxiety is coming on for you with no cause, then that is something that we would call an anxiety disorder. Generally speaking, most people, it's related to what's going on in their lives, but it might be outsized or it might paralyze them and prevent them doing something that might make them feel better. So, all this is to say, anxiety is kind of everywhere. Most of us will experience it at some stage in our lives or in particular circumstances. And generally, here, I want to kind of differentiate between what I would call mild anxiety or even positive anxiety. You know, the anxiety that motivates us, that makes us plan ahead, that makes us prepared, and the anxiety which consumes a lot of our mental energy, makes us fearful, and maybe makes us worse partners, worse friends, worse colleagues, whatever.
So that one feels like it's almost the anxiety cycle, right? Like when you get stuck in a loop and you're cyclical and you can't escape the loop, like that feels like the dangerous part of anxiety
Mm.
versus normal anxiety is trying to keep you away from danger.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think when somebody comes into therapy, it's actually often very, very hard to work with somebody if they're experiencing an extremely high level of anxiety because they're not present in a meaningful way. You know, it's like with a child, right? We say that when children are in this particular kind of mental headspace, they can't listen. When they're really upset, they can't listen. It's kind of true for adults as well. But when you're experiencing anxiety, there's no part of you that is focused on what's going on. I mean, as we know, the amygdala controls like our fear responses, our anxiety responses. The amygdala is also heavily involved in our decision making process. So when you are anxious, you genuinely get worse at what we would call executive function, I guess. So this is the problem with anxiety, like trying to find a way to immediately bring yourself down is often the first problem. And so if a client comes into therapy and they're super worked up, I have to do a lot of what sounds like really basic stuff to just get us to the point that I can be heard. So it's I will talk slowly. I will leave silence. I will try and talk quietly so they have to lean in and slow down. All this really basic stuff, which is just saying to them, we need to take the tempo down here. And only then can we get to the point that we can start looking at the source of the anxiety.
Quiet, safe space. Is that sort of like what you're working on? And,
Yeah.
this is in therapy, but then you also need to have those places in your life.
Well, and the voice, it's okay. I want them to feel safe with me. But it's also that there are kind of two voices here, right? When you're anxious, there's the voice that is like rabbiting at 100 decibels about like, oh my god, like what's going to happen? What will go on if this happens? Like, is my boss going to fire me? You know, is my girlfriend going to break up with me? Blah 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 blah. Then there's the smaller voice, which is saying what the real fear is. So normally, if you're experiencing anxiety, a good question is to ask like when it started. Like often people come into therapy, they'll say, "Well, I started feeling anxious," and they'll be weirdly specific. They'll say like 3 weeks ago, and I think that's interesting that you remember exactly what happened. Do you remember when it happened? Do you remember what was going on around then? And honestly, it's shocking how often people say, "Well, my boss told me that they were gonna be letting me go." Back then, truly, people come in and say this kind of stuff. But it might be other things, certain kinds of conversations with your spouse, something you heard about. Maybe there's a health issue, like whatever. All those things. I know it sounds obvious, but it's incredibly easy to overlook. And when you are in the anxiety spiral, it's hard to look outside it. So if you can identify when the anxiety started, what was going on around that time is a good question. Similarly, if you blow up at your partner and you say, well, I blew up at her, but I've been kind of pissed off with her all day. It's the same kind of question, right? You're like, when do you remember first feeling pissed off with her? And quite often it's, she said or did something that made me feel unvalued.
Mhm.
Those are the kinds of questions we want to get to. So often I think our anxiety is kind of cooking beneath the surface, between the surface, and then like this second stimulus brings it out, or maybe our symptoms just hit a noticeable level. Like for example, people come to therapy and say, "Well, I'm sleeping badly," and then when we dig into it, I'm like, "You've been anxious for 6 months or a year or longer, but only recently has it become unmanageable," and that's what makes them sit up and take notice.
I think the physical cues are so important for people to be able to realize. And we talk about the concept of diagnostic, like your physical diagnostic. This is so valuable for you to learn. So when I first separated from my ex-wife, I feel like my tongue was clamped to the roof of my mouth like for
Mm,
6 months time, and
yeah.
I clocked it, and I would then like go through exercises to release it. And then I'd be driving on the road and 5 minutes later, like be back, sort of like, I was, what the fuck? Could not get rid of that for a
Mm,
long time until like I was able to start feeling some level of peace and working through that. And I know that it was also, the business was sort of very stressful at the same time. People will have different responses to their different types of stress, and anxiety response is often different than the avoidant response. Sometimes both of those things overlap in depression. Like oftentimes, avoidants are depressed and won't know it for a very long time. They just think that that's how they walk through life,
mm,
because it's different. But clocking your physicality and often diagnosing what is going on there and then allowing yourself to release it. Some cases is just good as a cue to saying, oh, I am like this because my body is in this way. And then in other cases, you're like, oh, now that I know that it exists, I can release this. And I don't have that symptom anymore. I somehow like given it away. Like now that I know that my body's all like weird like this, I can actually relax into it, and it helps me my feelings as well. So I was holding the tension
mm.
when I didn't need it. And now that I've let the tension go, like I don't have those feelings as much either.
Where this makes me think about what you were saying before, which is finding yourself in this zone you were in last year, or finding you were getting the temptation to behave as you did last year, where you shut off and became very independent. How did you notice that you were in that zone? Like, what was the first thing that made you aware that you were in that space?
You mean this time around?
Yeah, this time around.
Yeah. So I mean, I have somebody I've been seeing for a while, and we have a relaxed, lovely relationship. And I felt like I was busy, and I was like, what can I cut from life? Like, if I feel like maybe I'm too busy or I'm slightly overwhelmed, like what can I trim down to? I was like, well, maybe this relationship isn't this, or like maybe it's not that, and like this is not true, by the way. Like this is just the process inside of my head. So I'm talking to you about my inner voice that I know is not true, but was starting to seep things in because I'm having stress responses. And then I was like, all right, so what can I narrow down? Like what can I get rid of? Like what commitments can I make it so that I can focus elsewhere? And then I was like, none of that makes sense. I'm pretty sure this is healthy for me. It's not putting anything on me. It's relaxed, it's flexible. Everything in this relationship in so many ways is like, if that's not good enough, then what's good enough? And to some extent, my past relationship was probably that way, although it was more complicated because like kids and everything. And this one doesn't even have that. And that then led me immediately back to, this is a you problem. Like you're
Mm,
you're in a spot about something and you're freaking out and looking for things that you could change. And the change isn't what you're looking for. Like it's just like work through it, you'll be fine. You're just slightly overwhelmed right now. And I don't usually get that way. So that's why, I mean, I'm not glad that what happened a year ago happened, but at least I'm glad that I'm learning lessons from it to be able to pilot myself a little bit better.
So you had this emotional impulse, and then when you subjected it to a bit of scrutiny, it showed that it was just an impulse and not like a rational thought, I guess.
Yeah, it's like, you don't need to fight with your partner when you're slightly irritated about it. Like you can
Mm,
just talk to them about, "Hey, I didn't really like how you made me feel earlier. I just thought I'd let you know. It's not really that big a deal, but also you tell me that when you make me feel uncomfortable or this or that, like I should talk to you, and it's the same way when I make you feel bad or undervalued or unvalued, like you should tell me so that I know and so that I can understand how my behavior impacts you." In this case, it was, oh, like I'm being weird about something I shouldn't be weird about. Like, what's the source of that? And like, is this true? And sometimes you will find that, oh, wow, this is kind of true. I've actually been chewing on this for a while. I just hadn't surfaced it. And it's a negative
mm,
thing. And maybe I need to think about addressing it. But then a lot of times it's just garbage, even for the smartest people because like your brain will just feed you shit. And sometimes you get stressed and then you're like, ah, I'm having a response.
mm. Okay, so that's really positive though. That like something pings in your head. It's almost like a little flag goes up where you're like, "Huh, that's interesting." Like, why is that
Mhm.
going on? And I think that that's kind of something that people generally should try and cultivate. Physical sensations, if you obviously these might be really obvious, like tightness in your chest or bad sleep, but sometimes we walk around, or sometimes I walk around, I can only speak for myself, realizing that I've got a sensation of like dread in my stomach and I just haven't examined it. And sometimes then I sit down and I start digging into it and I think, what's this about? Sometimes there's nothing. Sometimes there's literally nothing. It's like, oh well, I've got like this appointment later. Is the appointment a big deal? Is it scary? No. It's just like for some reason in my brain. And again, like this is the part of our evolution that where we're kind of stupid, right? In that we haven't got to the point where our brains are designed for the lives that we live. They are designed for the lives we used to live, which were
Yes.
much more full of physical peril. So I think that if you are noticing these feelings coming up in yourself, try and ask yourself what the fear is. Like, what's the fear is like the key question with anxiety, because there's always some fear there. And then there's a technique called the downward arrow, which is what we use in therapy. I mean, like, it's a kind of grand term for something that's like super obvious, really. If you were doing CBT, then they might talk to you about negative automatic thoughts. So, like the stuff that pops into the head when you experience some kind of like negative stimulus, right? And really, what the downward arrow is just asking again and again, and what does that mean to me? And what does that mean to me? So, an example of this would be, I didn't know what to say in that conversation. She thought I was boring. I'm always like that. I shouldn't try and make any friends. I'm a boring person. No one will ever like me. So it's like stage, 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 stage. And at the bottom, when you see how powerful and all consuming that bottom level is, then suddenly the level of anxiety you're experiencing starts to make sense. Because you think it doesn't make sense that I would feel like pure physical dread because this person I don't give it, this mum in the playground didn't seem to find me interesting. But when you realize that what that feeling is actually linked to, this idea that you're boring and no one likes you, then suddenly you think, oh, okay, I'm not overreacting. I'm just reacting to something that I wasn't like consciously, I wasn't aware of, I guess.
The automatic thoughts is such a tricky thing. And I've fought with this for 9 months. And like, why am I look, just don't think about that. Like, just don't think about that doesn't work. It doesn't fucking work. Recognizing that it's a pattern of thought, and you're like, oh, I need to break this pattern. Like, how do I find ways to think about other stuff that doesn't have this pattern? At some point, you think about it less, or those automatic thoughts come up less if you're sort of getting healthier, or if you're in a situation where like you're away from that.
Mm,
And eventually, like, allegedly, that's what healing looks like. But I just I found things getting placed inside of my head by my subconscious that I was like, you don't need to be here. Like, this is not good for me. But
mm,
so many times you actually built up a cycle in your stress cycle or your breakup cycle or your wet cycle that it becomes a thing that you wallow in, and you get used to that wallowing, and you build chemical pathways inside of your brain, and then it triggers into an automatic thing, and then you have feelings attached to it, and sometimes those feelings are somewhat removed, but there's still chemicals attached to it, which is like, again, a little bit of a funky ass thing. So this is how this cycle starts and perpetuates itself. And then you have to be like, how do I shunt myself off of this train track where I'm just encountering the cycle over and over again onto a different track that doesn't have the cycle or has it in a much lower frequency so that I can get myself out of here? And that is just like, I mean, that's the whole of human experience, I guess, but it's fucking hard to
mm.
do sometimes.
Well, yeah, man. Like, I think, even as a therapist, like when you're a therapist, you often realize that somebody is trying to recruit you, into their psychodrama. You're
Yeah.
like, okay, you're trying to make me the punishing parent or whatever it might be. But that's also, of course, what kind of goes on with your anxiety sometimes, right? Where it's like there's this animal part of you that is trying to recruit you into this cycle that is played out again and again and again. There's nothing useful at the bottom of it normally. If there's anything that you could derive from anxiety, it's normally early on. So, oh, I'm worried about being late to that thing tomorrow. I will set an extra alarm so that I don't miss it. That is reasonable. But then sitting
The
awake
thing that
and panicking about it.
you said like 20 episodes ago, you're like, I can make myself feel like shit whenever I want to. Like, it's just
Mm,
there. It's
mm,
accessible to me whenever I feel like it. Like, how do you make yourself feel good about yourself? And then you're like, oh, that's like a lot of work, a lot of baggage. And it was the compliment space as well. It's like, wow, how is the negative so accessible? And I think again, it's because these things are evolutionarily drilled into our heads where like negative things are usually, scary cycles and you need to be aware of it and you need to avoid it. And so you're responsive to that. But the positive things, like those, if you're too chilled out and laid back and happy, like you're much more likely to die from something that is scary in the olden times. In the now times, like you can probably just be on your couch forever and eventually they'll find you.
Well, and you might just die of a heart attack if you go the other way. So I mean, it's what I like what you were saying before though about the kind of there is the physical side of it. Like basically, okay, all these anxiety feelings, they're even if they're reactions to emotional threats, we experience it as a physical threat. Like
Mhm.
our body responds to somebody saying they're going to break up with us as if they're going to kill us, when in reality, like that is a different order of threat, right? Oh, I'm going to get in trouble at school. Like that shouldn't really activate us the way that the threat of death does, but it often does feel like it does. The positive thing is, as you were saying before, the physical stuff kind of goes both ways. So you will experience physical symptoms of anxiety, but also if you work on alleviating those physical symptoms, then it often has a positive emotional effect, right? So often that's another thing in therapy, what you were talking about, like detaching your tongue from the roof of your mouth. With clients, sometimes I'm sitting there and it's like, you're clenching your fists, you are really cuddled up right now, trying to protect yourself, or I can see that your shoulders are hunching, like all this kind of stuff. If you can get into that habit, if you find that you experience a lot of anxiety, asking yourself once a day, am I clenching my jaw? Are my shoulders up? I make fists with my toes, man. Like I think
Mm.
about that sometimes. I'm like, why am I doing this? And then when I try and release it, like John McClane in Die Hard, and then when I try and release it, like I do find that it has this kind of positive effect. So the good thing is that your physical stuff can go the other way. So if you do have breathing techniques or a yoga practice or anything like this, that will actually have a very positive effect on your emotional anxiety as well.
And it's the same thing with like your workouts too, because your workouts sort of push you through. It's hard to hold on to a lot of these things while you're having like a real physical workout, whether that's cardio or lifting, because like your body then takes over. I have to do the thing that is most important in front of me. The one that I found most surprising is that every once in a while I'll be like, I feel like I've clenching my sphincter, like trying to hold in a fart for the entire day. I'm not trying to hold in a fart. There's nothing about that I'm trying to do. But for some reason, like that has been a sort of stress response for me. And then, like, obviously, that is your core, like deep inside of you. And your body's just like, this is a really tough thing to do for a really long time. And once you
Yeah.
release that, you're like, wow, this is so much better for me. Some people find it with their shoulders. Like they hold their shoulders in a weird way and then they focus on it and they're like, oh, okay, I can release that. Maybe they get a massage or two, and then suddenly for like weeks at a time they're like, oh, I don't have that issue right now. Like it's all gone. And
Mm.
it's a really strange way how our bodies are intertwined with our mentality and our mental space in totally unrelated way connections.
Yeah, I mean, clenching your sphincter, like that's one of the ways supposedly of foxing a lie detector test, right? I mean, lie detector tests are bullshit, but supposedly it's one of those things because the effort of doing it raises your heart rate. And so you're like, if I can raise my heart rate by doing that, and I'm walking around like that, this is not good for my well-being to be like this. But there
Maybe I'm creating a diamond.
maybe, maybe,
Maybe.
maybe that's what we should do every year. Like give you a coal suppository, and the next year we get a diamond. But if it, but like you're right. Like essentially,
I'm just
there's
picturing this as like a sphincter gift at some point. You're like, baby, look. Like, did Rishi give his wife, his fiance, this? As I'm sorry, this has all gone wrong. I'm so sorry. Like,
this is the
keep
level
going.
up. This is they're more ethical than blood diamonds. Um,
Sphincter diamonds.
but the
Who doesn't want one of those?
desirability is also not strong.
Who doesn't want one of those, baby? I worked on this for a whole year for you. Like,
Depends who it is.
it's the most beautiful thing I could create. What sort of kinks are you into?
I'm going to leave that there. I'm going to leave it there. But look, anxiety signals, like they are it's fucking confusing, and it's okay if it takes you a while to work it out. Like it takes a lot of people a while to work it out. you will often find that people are feeling, they say, "Oh, I'm feeling really anxious at the moment." And it might be that they're excited about something. I mean, how many of us before we go on holiday feel anxiety, about the flight? Well, I'm not scared of flying, and I know I can get the train to the airport, and I know everything about the journey will be fine because I have an organized wife, and I'm technically an adult. I know that if I forget anything, it's not a problem because I'm going to another city where I can buy stuff. But I feel the anxiety. Well, that might be that the excitement of going away is easy to confuse. We actually see this in people who've had abusive relationships quite often. Sometimes people come out of relationships that are scary. And in their next relationship or their subsequent ones, they will say, I don't feel the spark. I don't feel the butterflies. The butterflies. And it's sometimes because they've come to see the intensity and the fear, the feeling of anxiety they had in the abusive relationship as passion, as excitement. Like they've started to equate those things. Our bodies are just really not good at differentiating all this stuff. So I do think a really good thing for people to do is to get into the habit of like checking in with their body once a day. Are my shoulders up? Is my jaw clenched? Do I grind my teeth? Like all this kind of stuff. And from there, you may also be able to work out certain triggers. I used to spend a lot of time on Instagram when I was in my late 20s. Boy, did that not help me out. Alcohol, terrible sleep, following your ex on social media, like whatever it might be, like that, having too many coffees, like all these things might be things that set you off. And once you're aware of the physical signs, then you start to notice when those things begin. You start to notice your shoulders coming up. You start to notice clenching your jaw. If you notice those, you can notice the triggers, and it starts to become easier to remove these anxiety triggers from your life.
Yeah, and it's not just anxiety. Like it's everything that's going on in your life like seems to tie back to your body and your mental state. And so doing these self-diagnostics that we've kind of talked about throughout the whole of the show is useful. And don't forget about them because many times like I'll get to a spot and you're like, "Oh, I'm kind of like I'm a little messed up right now, or I'm a little of a
Mm,
mess." And then you're like, oh, if I just work through the whole process around this, then I can get to a spot where I'm like, oh, I'm comfortable with all this. It was just that like I had undealt with thoughts. Or I had this recently. I was so busy and I was on the road and I got to back to my house and I was like, I'm really sad. Why am I
mm,
sad? And I wasn't sad, I just had not felt feelings because I hadn't had time to be in touch with anything about my feelings in, like, 8 days. And you're like,
sure.
"Oh, wow. That's fascinating too." I'm 49 at the weekend, and I'm still learning this shit. Like, you will learn stuff about life and yourself and how you deal with things for the rest of your life. Take passion and pride in it and do your best and never think that you're done because like you will continue to surprise yourself, but making things less of a surprise and figuring out how to work
Mm.
through your own sort of process and sometimes your own bullshit really really useful because it makes you much more tolerable and open to other people and being helpful there too.
Do you have like a structure that you use to work through that stuff? Like so before when you were like, "Oh, I recognize that this feeling is maybe not an accurate representation of reality." Did you do you did you take it to therapy? Did you journal about it? Did you just sit and kind of think it through? Like what does it look like for you?
So I don't have therapy right now because I needed the hours back. Although I love my therapist, she's awesome, and I'll probably go back and see her sometimes. Captain's in the background.
Doggy. Hey
Yes,
doggy.
14-year-old beagle back there. Um, and I will think about, and sometimes I will write about it, even if it's just like my notes app. So like that definitely is a thing that I'll do. But sometimes the writing in in certain ways because I like writing, but it can, as we know, some people can be quite indulgent in their writing, and sometimes it allows me to indulge in stuff that I shouldn't be. And so you're like, oh, is even this part like healthy? Sometimes I just need to get it out,
Mm,
right? And that's okay. But
sure.
sometimes I'm like, oh, because I have something to write, then I can be obsessive about this and I can really sort of get deep in it and wallow. And like that part is not healthy. So like you're now like this process isn't always a good thing for me because it lets me be in the bad space for a longer period of time. So really it's about, all right, breathing and space. And that space is sometimes in the gym with, just weights and the rowing machine or whatever. Sometimes it's the run, sometimes it's the sauna, and sometimes it's a dog walk. But just
Mm,
being away from stuff that is any sort of stimuli and letting my brain drift to the places that I think that like I need to address. I do need to do that regularly. And I think a lot of people, we've talked about this a lot of times, you need to make sure that you give yourself space. If you're having feelings, feel the feelings. Don't
mm,
suppress the feelings because they're telling you something. And sometimes it's simply like the baby thing of, I need to cry right now because like my body needs to get it out. And that's okay. But sometimes it's also, I'm overwhelmed or I'm frustrated or I'm sad or I'm just reminiscing of things that I thought were there. I can feel it and then I can move on with myself.
so this I think is like a really key difference, like in or a really key thing with anxiety, which is the feelings are real. The opinions producing the feelings may not be, right?
Right.
So when you're having those feelings, you can't just tell yourself not to feel them because it doesn't fucking work. Like our parents did that to us often. And did it work? Did it fuck? So I think that what we want to do is accept that we're feeling the feelings, but try and address the thoughts associated. So the example I used before, which is I didn't know what to say in that conversation. She thought I was boring. I'm always like that. I shouldn't try and make friends. I'm a boring person and no one will ever like me. If you do this, if you have this written down, then you can start to focus on the kind of argumentative structure here. And like, look, admittedly, people who are attracted to doing this are like philosophy undergraduates. Like, so it is annoying in that sense. I understand, but when you look at those kinds of statements, you can see that different statements are being made. So the first, like, I didn't know what to say in conversation. Okay, that's something you can know. That's like a fact, right? But the second, she thought I was boring. This is mind reading. Like this is interpretation. The third, I'm always like that. I shouldn't try and make friends. Oh, suddenly we're in an ought statement. Like I shouldn't try and do this. Like it's a normative statement. And then at the last, like I'm a boring person and no one will ever like me. Well, this is a big generalization and it's induction, right? It's like because this thing is the case, everything will be like this thing. If somebody made an argument to you like that at work or you know your partner in an emotional conversation, you would say, what? Like this thing doesn't follow from that thing and doesn't follow from that thing. You'd notice that that was bullshit. But when you say it to yourself, you're very, very inclined to believe each step along the way, even as you can see it doesn't logically follow from the previous when you look at it. So I think that you can see when you do this that we're programmed to believe the most anxiety inducing argument. We're programmed, as we said, to seek safety, not peace. And so this the main thing with therapy that we try and do with anxiety and that some people can do by themselves as well is like this pincer approach. So on the one hand, what's the fear? Like what does this mean to me? This thing that has triggered me. What does trigger it? You know, like if you're not really certain about that, what are the base ideas or what we call core beliefs about myself? Why am I vulnerable to this? And then on the other hand, one of the things we start with is why do you believe this negative voice? Is that a fact or is that an opinion? What are the less stressful possibilities? How would we respond if that like how would I respond if this mum at the playground finds me boring? Yeah, I wouldn't care. Like I wouldn't care. Like I don't care. Like if somebody finds me boring, we're not going to be friends. Like it's fine. Like I'm happy to know that. What resources do we have to cope with adversity? This sort of stuff. So there are these two prongs that I think are really worth focusing on. So often with anxiety, we're trying simultaneously to get at what's underneath it, to drill down into the stuff that in a way is more painful. And on the other hand, to say, this isn't the whole of reality. You are not just this thing that you're experiencing right now. And the aim is that over time we get better at noticing stuff. And then we get to a point where you can set it aside. I actually wanted to ask you this before. Do you feel, because this is something I've been thinking about in therapy, do you feel like the discomfort that you've got used to in your professional life, in exercise, in parenting, do you think that that helps you with this? I mean, I realize this is a leading question, but do you think this helps you with kind of combating emotional discomfort now?
So I think that a lot of these things are tied together, and especially like the mentality space. So like doing long distance running, like doing something that like starts out and it sucks. Like there's almost nobody that like running longer distances finds enjoyable in the early days. And then you build up and you build up, and like it still sucks for quite a long time. And at some point you're like, look, I can just do hard things. I can bring my mind to choose to do this. That is true
Mm,
for other spaces as well, as long as you believe it. And this is the thing that you just talked about, that sort of level of inductions and the downward arrow there. And it seems very woo shit. And I say woo shit
mm,
in sort of the affectionate way, but also like I tend to avoid, crystals and astrology, and because like extreme woo shit. But building affirmations for who you want to be that combat the negative downward arrow cycle, I think actually is really
mm.
positive.
Yeah.
Like, if you woke up today and you're like, Patrick, you are a bad bitch, and these are the reasons why you're a bad bitch, and you said this to yourself on a regular basis, and you started to believe it, you didn't just say it, but like you started to believe it, it would change your life if you needed that.
Mm,
And so, for many people, if you've got these downward arrow cycles, like creating positive affirmations of who you are and who you want to be is useful. And it comes back to the most basic phrase that you and I have used that sometimes we lose track of inside of ourselves, which is that I am worthy of love. And that
mhm,
is so hard sometimes. Like when you fucked up, or when you're having a bad time, or when you think that like the world is against you, like the most crucial component there that people lose when they often like choose to end their own lives is like they lose sight of the fact that they are worthy of love, and you will be
mhm,
loved. And in many cases, you are loved, even if you don't sort of realize it in the moment. Taking that as your baseline, like from the internal downward arrow, and then saying, like, these are the things of who I am and who I want to be. Even if I'm not those people right now, I will become those people. That is the positive affirmation for it. And it is woo shit to me in a way, but I
mm,
know that you have to reprogram yourself because you're negatively programmed in the bad ways. And so it's not as woo shit as it looks like, because we've actually learned that like humans are better at operating in this way. And this is why goals are useful, and this is why having
mm,
aspirations and dreams is useful for you. This is all part of the same functionality. It's just drilling it down deeper so that you can find stuff that you can hold on to, and you can have mini bits that you believe in, even if you got something very large that's sort of tough to grasp at the moment.
mhm. Yeah, I think a lot of people struggle with affirmations, talking to themselves in that way. And I think if you are struggling with it, one way to do it is to start with stuff that's difficult to disagree with. So saying like I'm a good person is like a really big claim that has loads of like smaller claims inside it. But if you say to yourself, I try to be kind, that's actually much harder to argue with. You can come up with evidence for why that is the case. Or I'm an intelligent person, or I try hard with this friend, or I make an effort to see that person. Like if you can, often if you can stick to factual stuff, like that's a good gateway into it, because it's actually really hard to argue the toss with those things mentally. Hard to get into an overthinking cycle if the argument is, well, I try and treat other people the way I want to be treated. Like broadly, that's quite difficult to argue with. It's broadly true, right? So if it's a struggle for you, you can try that. But yeah, the there's also, I think, it reminds me what you were saying of somebody was telling me recently that they used to work for Childline, and sometimes when the child would talk, they were actually trained when a child would say, like, no one loves me, no one cares about me, to repeat that, just to say exactly the same words, which sounds really strong, to say nobody loves you. Um, and often, but the idea is that often the response is, well, no, that's not true. When somebody else says it, then it often activates this kind of argumentative urge in
Yes.
you, and suddenly you're like, no, actually, like my mum does care about me, and already you're having a sort of productive dialogue, technically, with yourself. So it's, if you imagine somebody saying to you, if you write down all this shit that you say to yourself, you're not good at this, you're not a good person, you're not worthy of love, and you imagine a person you hate saying it to you, then suddenly there'll be a little part of you that
Becky,
says,
go
fuck you.
fuck yourself.
Yeah. You'd be like, fuck you, what do you know? That can be helpful. All these sorts of visualizations, I agree, they can be a bit woo woo. Try fucking getting English therapy clients to do this shit. Like, good luck. But it's worth a try. And these are people who've come to therapy in the first place, right? Yeah. So I mean, look, if you're having these feelings, they need expression. whether that's talking through them yourself, if you can do that without kind of getting stuck in it, which does normally mean journaling or something like that, or recording a voice note, whatever. But talking to a therapist, talking to a friend, talking to a family member, those are all useful. There's also, I think, just you've got to be curious about it. Like, approach what's going on with you with this, try and do it with an open minded attitude of like, I wonder why that is. So it's very tempting to say, oh my God, when I have to send an email to my boss, I get really anxious. Okay, let's not leave it there. Like, why? What is it about your boss? Is it that your boss do they fly off the handle? Do you have an issue with authority? Is it your idea of success or failure? Like what is going on here? Is it the echo of another relationship? Do they remind you of your dad, your mom, whatever? Like, these sorts of things all become very useful. And then you can remind yourself that what's going on right now is not that other thing. This boss is not my dad. My value as a person does not rest on this thing. When I first became a therapist, my first child was very young, and or when I first started seeing clients, and I remember beforehand, like, getting as anxious as I get about things, which is not that anxious, but like fairly anxious. And I would sit there and say to myself beforehand, my baby's going to feel the same way after this about me as she does before, whether it goes well or badly. She's not going to love me more if it goes well. She's not going to love me less if it goes badly. Like, I'm going to go back to my wife and my child after this, and they will still be there and they will still love me, and my life still has like value. And honestly, it helps a lot because you're not the worst things you've done, and you're not your biggest fuck ups. And you're certainly not, and this can be a helpful thing with anxious people, you're not whatever happens in the next 10 minutes. I'm about to go into this meeting. I'm about to have this conversation. That's not who you
God,
are.
sometimes it feels like it. Sometimes it feels like, oh, this next little period is like the rest of my life, and it's just not. It's like barely related to the rest of your life.
Completely. I, w- we, again, we get into this mindset where we cannot see beyond what is immediately happening to us, and it's not the whole story. And so, and obviously there are other tools as well you can use here. Like, we've talked about exercise. It can be obviously, generally it like raises your endorphins, like generally brings up your mood. But also, if you're feeling really anxious, like, some people will go and run up and down the stairs at work when they're feeling anxious to burn off some of the nervous energy. That can be really helpful. I knew a client who would who would like change her socks in the middle of the day, like at work. And she said there was something about it. Like, I'd take off my shoes, I would change my socks, and I felt like a whole new person. And it was like the first half of the day was out of my mind. And I was starting a new day. And I was like, that works for you, then like, great. Like, I understand it. Like, it makes sense to me. I don't know if it worked for me, but I thought that was pretty cool. Yoga, meditation, all this kind of stuff. And the thing about yoga and meditation is not just that it controls your breathing, controls your heart rate, but mental control, which is something I'm thinking about a lot now, because in therapy, as in all places, when you're a therapist, I mean, your mind wanders. Sometimes your mind wanders away from a client for a second, and you have to get in the habit of bringing it back. And that's something they teach you in meditation, right? That it's like, thoughts come up, but you are not the thought. You are you, and the thought passes through. And so it's like, I can set the thought aside. So rather than I am anxious, some people find it helpful to say, I am having an anxious thought, or I am experiencing a feeling of anxiety, rather than that pure emotional expression of, oh God, or I can't cope right now, whatever it is. Like, so for some people, that's a really helpful stuff too. And then breathing, grounding, all that kind of stuff as well. Medication for anxiety, there's stuff, but it's not gonna deal with it permanently, is the honest answer. Like, when it comes to medicating anxiety, the only real long term medication that we have is like an antidepressant. Um, People can be prescribed antidepressants there, and sometimes beta blockers, like obviously that you might have after a heart procedure. Like, those operate on the physical stuff, right? So racing heart will
Right.
not happen if you're on beta blockers, but the thoughts are still going to be there. Antidepressants can help bring up your lowest level, and you can work with your doctor on those because there are a million different kinds. But all the anti-anxiety medications, so in the UK we have alprazolam, that's Xanax, diazepam, that's Valium, lorazepam, that's Ativan, like all this stuff. Like, those are all short-term things. They're normally addictive. So nothing here is a lasting solution. Like, that's not to say you can't use those if you have acute anxiety, but that shit is not the answer. Like, you are gonna have to,
You
I'm
got to do the
afraid,
work.
put on the fucking rubber gloves, man. Like, you gotta do it.
Do the work. It's always the right answer. Do the work. I think that that's going to wrap us for today. And it's going to wrap us for Man Down, at least for this stint. So thank you so much to everybody that's listened to us and given us questions and feedback. Hopefully you found this valuable. And honestly, like we've just really enjoyed talking about this stuff because we think that it was some good that needed to be in the world. And it's given us a chance to share some stuff that we've learned and also to investigate things in ourselves that we hadn't, thought about or see from the other person's perspective. You're like, oh wow, that's really cool. Like I think I've learned a lot. I hope that you have too. So thank you so much to everybody for listening. Patrick, tell the lovely people goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you for joining us.